What's going on, everybody? It is your boy, the ITP Paladin 929 here, coming at you with kind of like a quick update. So, I would like to quickly point out that, well, first off, am I able to change the tab here? Probably not, right? Yeah, I'm probably going to have to change tab a different way. I'll take a look into it in just a minute. I'm not used to doing full screen. In fact, I might just ignore it, but I have a bunch of tabs up that I kind of want to keep, and it doesn't really matter if anybody sees it, but basically what I wanted to get on was I put out a video the other day talking about the experimental card, and I wanted to quickly basically give more clear direction of what I'm thinking to it, because on that video I was basically looking at it for the first time along with you guys, so kind of give a clearer idea of what my actual thoughts are on this. And this is the post that was actually put out by a guy named Blue Frestleaf. I'm not 100% sure if that's actually one of the developers or not. I don't think so. But he clarified it, and thankfully it was put on the homepage for Overwatch League, so everyone can now see it. But this is kind of like a more like in-depth review, like something after a little time of reflection, how I actually feel about it. The next thing to quickly note is that there's another page that talks about, it was released from a Blizzard developer, this one I know, was talking about, you know what? Hold. I don't even care. Can I get out of it? There we go. Basically, they were talking like this is the important thing to read it. It's important that we clarify these experimental changes are present for the sole purpose of the tournament. The changes within are not intended to reach the retail environment. Since the experimental mode provides a unique environment, it serves as a great tool for something fun and engaging like this tournament. So that was kind of their, I'm going to put this back full screen. This was kind of their way of basically saying like, this isn't going to go to live servers and nobody should be expecting to see these things live. I was under the impression that if this tournament turned out to be a success, that it would go to the live servers, and in hopes that maybe there is a change of idea, like they can always change their minds. This is basically to just give a kind of like a look over and again give a more clearer idea now that I've had some time to like reflect upon what I read. Because at the time, again, I was reading it at the same time that you guys had found out as well. So everything seemed good, but let's actually reread some of these changes. So let's read down the list that was actually put on here that's clarified. This is now alphabetical, so it should be easier. Anna max ammo increased from 12 to 14, and her nano boost can now be used on herself. I still believe that this is a great change because it gives her survivability and it gives her more options and playability. Already bringing a strong suit to an already strong healer, but at the same time, she's not being overpowered because, let's face it, the only way she could be overpowered is if her nano boost basically made her invulnerable, which I don't even see that being a problem. And max ammo being increased to 14, she needs all the help that she can get. Like, literally, the lack of mobility is what makes her not really a very strong pick in some instances. Like, she needs to be able to move fast, and for that, you need to either have a team that'll peel for you or have, like, a Lucio to speed boost you. It's really like her mobility is her weakness, and everybody thinks that she should get a little bit more mobility to give her some survivability, but giving herself nano was another option, in my opinion. So in other words, it's a great change. Ash's dynamite reduced from 100 to 90. Not a bad change. I understand why they would do that. Basically meaning that she doesn't get as much damage output, and thus, she's not dealing out as much with her shots, along with her abilities. Baptiste, his regenerative burst healing reduced from 75 to 65. So thankfully they clarified that, or thankfully this was clarified. Immortality field, we already had the information from going from 20% health to a 1 health alone. I don't see why his regenerative burst needed a decrease, but I do see why his immortality needed a nerf. And I actually see that this would actually be a great change if it was brought to live server. In fact, you know what? Anna's change should hit live server. Ash's might not benefit so greatly, but I think I'm going to do this at this point. Baptiste's change should go through. I don't know about the regenerative burst healing, but all in all, the top three should absolutely be put in the game, like maybe without question, maybe with some question, with some precedence. We just have to see how this works. Bastion, I think that his change should go through because his self-repair will increase movement speed, which will mean that he'll have survivability if he has to run away. I mean, if you can't self-repair when you're hacked by a Sombra, it won't make a difference, so you'll have to counterplay a little bit easier, but that was kind of a given when you have to face up against the Bastion. Brigida's Inspire healing to teammates removed when she's eliminated, and I do believe that is something that, like, I understand why, they put it in there to stay, but at the same time, I don't think anybody would miss it if it went away. So should it be put on the live game? Maybe not absolutely, but definite consideration. Diva's booster's duration increased to 3 seconds, so that gets her an extra second of being able to move around the map, and extra mobility for a dive tank is always a good thing, and it increases her strengths. I don't know if it should be added to the game, considering that I don't play often against the Diva, and when I do, she always like decimates me before she needs to use her boosters, so there's no real information from me that I could add to it. Doomfist, no changes. Honestly, I think there needs to be a change. I might make another video now that I bring this up, but I'm going to talk about Soldier a little later on, so we'll go into that. Echo. Her duplicate, when ultimate ends, she'll be healed at half health instead of full. Abso-freaking-lutely needs to be added. There's no question about this, that this needs to be a change that has to happen on the live server. Anybody that says any different obviously does not realize the potential problem that Echo has right now in-game. And quite honestly, it pisses me off every time I have to fight her, even with someone that counters her. It's just a nightmare to deal with her when she basically gets a 2 get out of jail free cards, and one of them could even include a member of the team. Like, unless you have a fully coordinated team, which is not all the time, you're not going to be able to beat her a majority of it. So whatever. Genji's alternative fire spread reduced from 9 to 8 meters, and his Dragon Blade gets increased by a second duration whenever he gets a kill. It's an interesting concept. I don't have an opinion on this because truthfully it could make him or it could break him. So this one will need some testing to see what ends up coming out of it. But I understand why they want to base his duration off kills, because sometimes you don't get an immediate kill, and it gives you that extra 1 second to attempt to get a full clearing out of it. Because it's, unless you're a pro at Genji, you sometimes don't even get that 6K. So I'm gonna admit and say this will make it a little easier to manage. I think that some ultimates should kind of work this way, but nothing that comes to mind at the moment. Hanzo's Dragon Strike is the thing getting modified here, is that his movement speed is increased by 20%, or its movement speed is increased by 20%, excuse me. Damage is increased by 20%. So let me actually do a little math right there because I can't use my screen. So 300 damage per second times, nope, 0.2. So it'll do 360 damage per second. It's not the worst I've seen. I mean, honestly, it should be doing a decent amount of damage considering, so I'm not having a problem. But it's also unidirectional. Like, the best way to get out of it, step out of the way. If you die to it by running into it, that's your fault. And the distance before the dragon forms and the arrow shot lowered from 10 to 5 meters. I think that's a necessary change. In fact, I'm happy with that Dragon Strike being modified in this way, and I think that it should. The movement speed is iffy. Maybe that could be toggled a little bit if it was to be put on live servers, but it should be a change considered to go into live. Absolutely. Junkrat's Concussion Mine, minimum damage increased by 5 points, so not a big deal. I mean, I would be up for it, but it's like 5 damage that we don't need. Lucio's Soundwave cooldown increased from 4 to 6 seconds, and his crossfades radius increased by 50, and effectiveness increased by 20% at close range and falling off to a negative 50% at maximum range. I think that this is a good change that they should consider putting onto the live card, because Lucio is kind of like that encouraging effect to bring people closer together and work together as compared to being spread out. And there always needs to be like a compromise, like, you know, spread when you need to, get in when you need to, but this will actually encourage more like close gameplay, which will mean that there will be the enemy team actually has to work against a coordinated team versus like a spread out one. So they'll have to actually play a true counter, which would actually, in my opinion, or at least based on what I can think of off the top of my head, like that would increase Zarya's odds of actually landing a Graviton Surge and capturing all 6. So who knows, that there might be a Zarya Hanzo duality right there once again if this was to go to live patch, which they said, again, I'm going to clarify because we're midway through. They said that it's not going, but I'm just talking about on the off chance that they change their minds and are like, you know, some of these changes actually seem like a really good idea. McCree has no changes, and May's maximum ammo goes to 140. I don't see a problem with that. May's survivability is not what it used to be, and they are trying to make it easier with her current patches, so I don't see a problem with her maximum ammo changing. Killing blows reset Guardian Angel cooldown. I don't understand that 110%. Like, if she gets a kill, then her Guardian Angel, which already has like a 2-second cooldown to my knowledge, gets reset. Like, by the time you get the kill anyway, like, your Guardian Angel's already reset. So that's still kind of like, I don't understand what the whole intent behind the change is, but we'll go on that later. Moira, no changes, and Orisa's protective barrier gets upped by 100 points, and her cooldown increased by 1 second. I'm okay with that. I'm completely okay with that because they basically counterbalanced whatever was basically making her stronger, so I'm fine with it. Pharah's new passive, damage taken while airborne decreases by 5%, and damage taken while grounded increased by 10%. So that isn't what I thought it was. Basically, they mean it's a little weird. Like, if you're airborne, your damage is decreased by 5%. Okay, so they clarified it. It means that she doesn't take as much damage. So I initially thought that it was her rocket damage will do less when she's on the ground as compared to in the air, but that's not her damage that's being affected. It's the damage she's taking in. Okay. I don't see that as a problem. I mean, I'm okay with that. I mean, it is a little hard to get her, and it would make her almost impossible with a pharmacy, but it's pretty much the same principle with a Widowmaker one-shotting her and Ashe getting boosted. Like, if you have the appropriate boosts, do it. It'll encourage her airplay, and it'll make her, like, you know, a little easier to manage, because if she's on the ground, she's done. Reaper's Shadow Step voice line is removed. So that's good. That's good, and I think they said they would take away his voice line, so they would also lower the volume of how loud it was. Earth Shatter, this is a change that, like, everything that I mentioned above, I'm completely okay with, so they should consider adding this into the game. Reinhardt's Earth Shatter should stun targets up to 3 seconds up close, and a maximum target up to normal for 2.5 seconds. That half-second difference should actually just be a 1-second difference, in my opinion, but I can see this being added into the game because it would make landing your Earth Shatter a little bit more meaningful. Like, don't just land it for the sake of landing it, but at the same time, you know, try and get some real value out of it. So Roadhog and Sigma, no changes, and Soldier 76. His Helix rockets are the only thing being affected. This kind of pisses me off. Like, just take away self-damage if you're going to do this kind of stuff. I mean, I understand, like self-damage should not be a thing anymore at this point. And if they're going to give him self-damage, lower the damn secular down to so that he only removes 10 points from his health, because honestly, that is way more than a melee that can kill him. And it's kind of crappy that people with armor are still receiving damage from their explosives when literally a guy, Junkrat, to point him out, literally receives nothing from literally any of his abilities. And it's like, come on now. So now he could hold 2 charges, damage reduced from 40 impact to 80 explosive to 30 impact and 50 explosive. So basically 80 damage in total. Self-damage and all that. I think that this could be something potential, and I'm going to actually put up a video dedicated to Soldier and talk about that more from like a Soldier main's perspective, but I wouldn't be opposed to at least giving it a shot and seeing if maybe it works, because if it's going to be 2 charges of Helix rockets, then damage reducing from 120 to 80 means that it's going to be 120 for 1 shot or 160 for 2. I'm okay with that. Like, anything more would be better. Like, he needs something. And I'll talk about that more later. Sombra's Hack, activation time increased from 0.6 to 1.5. And then duration increased from 5 to 6 seconds. So it basically is a little harder to get off a hack. And she is very powerful in shutting down abilities. So I see where they're going with this patch and this tournament. And I'm kind of okay with it if it was to go to live game. But considering that it's already a little difficult to kind of operate with Sombra from time to time, I could see this as being kind of like hindering to her. However, her translocator cooldown triggered when used or destroyed is reduced from 6 to 5 seconds, so she gets a little bit more usability, like a little bit more mobility, excuse me. Symmetra's turret speed travel time goes from 15 to 20 meters. I don't really see this as something like too impactful because it's always easy to take out her turrets if you're well prepared. I don't usually have a lot of trouble with her other than just trying to kill her when the team's coming in, but I don't know. I mean, I can see this going into the game, but at the same time, like, I don't think she needs a buff. I don't think she needs any buff whatsoever. Torbjorn's turrets. It can now hold 2. The damage and health of turrets reduced by 40%. So that's nearly 50%, meaning that they're going to be a little more than half strong. They're going to be 60% as strong as a normal turret. So I don't see that as an issue. I think that would be a good change because the way the turrets are right now, it's not that bad. So I see this as a kind of a win. I'm okay with that kind of experimental card change. I'd be up to facing a Torbjorn like that. Tracer, her health will be increased by 25 points and her recall cooldown by 2 seconds. I mean, she's meant to be a glass cannon. It's already easy enough to take out a Widowmaker, so just imagine that as a Tracer, only with mobility. I think she needs to remain at 150. I don't think the health increase was necessary, and her recall cooldown might be a little bit better, but I can see that as a potential, but I'm not opposed to it or for it. So we'll go from there. Widowmaker, Venom Mine. Her damage is increased to 120, so it'll basically be a melee hit for a Tracer or a death sentence for a Tracer. Duration changed from 5 to 6 seconds, and trigger radius increased from 3 to 4 meters. Basically, it'll go off a little bit further away. I can see this as a good change for Widowmaker. She is meant to be that sniper that is in your backline or flanking or whatever not, but she's meant to kind of like deal the damage, and her way of mobility to get out or in a position. Like, you have to understand, like, I know why people call her overpowered because of her one-hit capabilities, but you have to understand she's very easy to kill. If you catch her out of position, she's done. There's nothing she can do to save her life. And if you properly dive a Widow, there's really no reason you can't kill her off. Like, Winston should never have a problem. D.Va should never have a problem. No dive tank should never have a problem with a Widow. Unless you use up all your abilities, and she has all of hers on ready. So I can see this as a change being put on, and I'm okay with it. Winston, his armor is increased by 15 and health reduced by 15. So basically they're trading off armor for health. Total pool is the same. So basically he still stays at 500 and 500 health. Definitely needed that. Wrecking Ball. Okay. I am 110% for this change. Right now I am for this change, and nobody can argue that this needs to be put in the game, the live version of the game, and I really, really, really advocate for this to be put in the game because this tank is very oppressive, and it's like you get no value a good portion of the time, and he basically has his own get-out-of-jail-free card for the most part. Like, I understand that there's some arguments like his counter is crowd control, but if you've ever really been in a match with a bunch of randoms, both competitive and quick play, you'll note that some people people are stubborn to the point where they will not play a counterplay out of stubbornness. And I would say that I'd be one of them if it weren't for the fact that I'm trying to expand my list currently for myself personally. So the changes on Wrecking Ball is that his size is reduced by 15%, so he'll be a smaller target. His ammo is reduced from 80 to 70, which means he'll have less to shoot. Grappling Claw cooldown increased by 2 seconds. It means that you have to be wise about entering a fight, which is definitely something that every hero needs to consider. And that would mean that he can't just get free value, like constantly going in, going out, going in, going out. It's like go in, go out, give it a minute, go in. It's like give it a little time. Like, he is just so oppressive, and it's like ridiculous. Lastly, and this is the one that I really am advocating for, Adaptive Shield no longer prevents enemies from gathering ultimate charge. I understand why they gave Adaptive Shields, but taking away ultimate charge and giving him that free value to basically not benefit you in any way to fight or even focus him is ridiculous. Like, I'm all for his survivability. Let him have the Adaptive Shields, but if we get nothing for it, I would even be happy if we had like half the amount of ult charge. Like for every amount of percentage ult charge you get for a normal shot, his adaptive shields would give you 50%. I would have been okay with that. But apparently they don't think that, so whatever. I don't even care, and this needs to be put in the live game. This abso-fucking-lutely needs to be put in the live game. And down to the last two heroes. Zarya's projected barrier range is increased from 30 to 34 meters, so an extra 4 meters to shoot. I don't see that as really an issue. I've never had an issue with her adaptive shield being at a range. So, or projected barrier, excuse me, did I say? Yeah, adaptive barrier, projected barrier. I'm already going right back to freaking Wrecking Ball here. I'm okay with that increase in range. I don't know if it should be put in game per se. I don't really see a problem with it, but I can see why it would help her out. And finally, Zenyatta's Transcendent Speed Multiplier increased from 2 to 2.3, and that's pretty much it. There's not really much more to talk about. So overall, I still think that a good portion of these need to be added to the game for the sake of survivability. I think that, like, out of all 32 heroes, I'm doing this off the top of my head, so I'm a little shot right now. I haven't, I've been taking care of my daughter all day, so forgive me for that. I think out of all 32 heroes, they had like 5 of them not included in this one, if I counted correctly. So it's like Doomfist, McCree, where is it? Moira, Sigma, Roadhog. Yeah, 5 heroes were not included in this patch. I think that they should have included something for McCree, Moira, Roadhog, Sigma, and Doomfist. I think they should have included a little something, even if it was a minor change. I think that they didn't touch them, though, because nobody could come to a consensus of how to balance them. As I understood that this was supposed to be like the pros and streamers that came up with this patch. So to clarify my opinions on it, I still think that they're, considered for the main game, and I just needed to correct on my previous video that they were going to be added later on. As to my knowledge, this wasn't going to be put on the live game, but to say the least, these are changes that are actually not too bad and would definitely mix up the meta across the board. I would be totally okay with giving out everything a shot, including Soldier 76s. I might make a video shortly after this and just keep it on the back burner. I'm not sure. But I might actually save it for Thursday's video. I might do that because Thursday my wife will be at work. I'll be taking care of the baby. I'll have a little more time, and when she gets back and make the video, I don't really care about the comment section. But overall, I don't hate them. I think that it should strongly be considered to mix up the meta, and I think that this would be a great way to keep the game fresh by changing up some of the things that were not expected. Some changes. Like, I know some people are thinking it to be a little negative, and I think that with these changes being clarified, it makes it a little easier to visualize in game and be like, hey, this might be overpowered, this might not be. We have to take into account that some of the changes here are very minimal, but some of them are like game-changing. Echo and Wrecking Ball, to take 2 instances, are being not completely overhauled, but their abilities are being a little bit more fleshed out to where they should have been in the first place. Sigma, in my opinion, should have been strongly opinionated on my part. Should have been put on this experimental card, and I don't know why they didn't come up with a patch for him, but to say the least, I can kind of understand. Like, at the time of his release, I'm just going to go off on a short rant here. At the time of his release, he was absolutely overpowered. He was the best of pretty much the entire tank list as far as his abilities went, without most of the downsides that came with it. Like, his shield strength was as strong as Reinhardt's, but he didn't have to sacrifice positioning to gain the ability strength. He was able to cast out a shield and throw it out like Orissa's, but he was able to pull it back and reposition it if he screwed it up. Unlike Orisa, you have to wait the entire 11 seconds to put it down again. And again, it was stronger. Next, he had his, I forgot the name of his ability, the one that has the black hole. It's basically a defense matrix, and at the time of release, if I'm not mistaken, it was able to actually take in more than defense matrix, and as a result, it was able to also take the strength from Zarya and add to his shields and basically add to something and make them harder to kill. His rock, it was a crowd control ability that can't be deflected, can't be argued, and all in all, it also dealt damage on top of stunning the target, so that was kind of overpowered as heck. And finally, his ultimate ability, he was able to get it through even when he was stunned, stuff that should normally stop his ability. So thankfully they fleshed him out, but I still think that he needs a kind of a nerf, or rather a rebalance. Not necessarily something hard like, oh, well, take away his ability to throw the rock and get the stun time and the damage out, like nerf the damage and all of it. No, like I'm not going to go off on telling people how to balance him. I think he needs a rebalance, like a re-examination, but at the same time, I'm not the one to give that opinion. I just know that he's a little strong for a tank, and we'll go from there if they decide to put this through. So I'm going to end the video here before I go off on a further rant. Again, synopsis being, I think that this should absolutely be added, and I'm glad that they clarified some of the changes. It makes it a little easier to visualize, and I hope that Blizzard at least strongly considers putting this on the experimental card for live servers, because we need to shift this game, and while we're waiting for the second game, Overwatch 2's not been announced for a release date yet, and this will keep the game somewhat alive. At least in my opinion, it'll keep it somewhat alive, so that way they can, make it work until Overwatch 2 is ready. I think that this is absolutely necessary. All in all, I'm done. I'll see you guys on Thursday. Catch me on stream on Twitch. Oh my god. I'm going to end it here. Have a good night, everybody, and thank you for tuning in. I'll see you on stream.